So, I was trying to write a little bit more in my book today, and I couldn't think of anything interesting to write. I mean, I could think of a lot of things interesting to write, I just didn't know which order to write them in to make it the most interesting. So I figured I'd just start ranting about stuff. I'll start ranting about my favorite book series of all time, which is the Dark Tower series. If you've never read the Dark Tower series, it's by Stephen King. It's a 7-part series, and it's pretty amazing. It's one of the reasons why I started getting into writing. Because before that, I didn't even care to read much, but it kind of stars this cowboy who's seeking the Dark Tower for whatever reason you don't fully understand. And throughout the series, you don't fully understand. He's just trying to get there, trying to save something, save himself, save the world, who knows. And throughout the entire series, he attempts to get there, and right at the very end, he makes it, and the ending's pretty amazing. But I figured I'd rant about them one by one. The first one was really hard to get into just because it's really separate from the entire series. It was originally done in small parts throughout a magazine, a science fiction magazine of some kind, and you can tell that it's really not, it doesn't feel like it's a part of the other books. It feels like something different almost. And he went to rewrite it apparently to add this magic number in called the number 19 to try and make it connect a little bit better. But really, the whole thing is just, once you read the other ones, you're like, wow, that first book was nothing like these other ones. It was good though. It followed him traveling through the desert and all that kind of stuff. But for me, it took me a few tries, partly because at the start I didn't really want to read. I didn't really have a huge desire to read, but something inside me, I was like, I don't read enough. I really want to get into a book series. And I tried Lord of the Rings and other fantasy settings, because I do like the fantasy setting. I like that whole magic aspect. But trying to get into those kind of books are very hard to do for me, because everything about it, the whole mythology of it, it's hard to really take it seriously. And so that's why something a little bit more contemporary or slightly not too science fiction-y is better for me. And that's really why I've managed to finish the Dark Tower series, because a lot of the times it's set in this bizarre future world that's not really like a Star Trek style future world. I mean, everything is way past its prime. Whatever future world this was, it's long gone, and all that's left is this wasteland. I didn't necessarily know that going into the story. The cover, basically I judged a book by the cover. It was a very interesting cover of a cowboy looking at a raven with a tower in the background, the Dark Tower in the background. And so I picked it up. I remember back in high school, my friend Chad read the series here and there. I'd seen him in class with the books, and by that time he was on the last 3, which are just monsters. Well, to be fair, the 6th one's pretty easy, but 4, 5, and 7, especially 7, they're definitely Stephen King books, if you know what I mean. I tried to get that started with the first one, and my whole thing about it was, instead of buying all 7 of them at once and then just giving up, I'd buy them one at a time. When I finish one, I'll buy another one. Simple as that. So I started with the first one. It took me probably about 3 tries to get through. I'd start it, forget what I was reading, just stop, give up. A few months go by, and I'd pick it back up again and try reading it from the start again. And eventually, on the 3rd time, I got all the way through, and it ends on kind of a cliffhanger. So you're like, well, of course I got to buy the second one. And I did. And it was during a winter storm of sorts. It wasn't during an ice storm. We were having a few ice storms, but it was during just a snow, and I couldn't get in or out of work. But I did have that book. And so I said, well, I'll pick it up and read it. And I read it within about a week, which for some people, I've met some people who say, well, I can, read a big book in 3 days. And I say, well, that's all well and dandy, but I don't read. I do not read as much as I would like to. I just don't read. And so to read a big, thick book within the span of a week is really awesome for me. I was really proud of that. And that one, the second book, The Drawing of the Three. The first book was called The Gunslinger. The second book's The Drawing of the Three. And it's probably my favorite book out of all of them. Just something about it. He manages to take opening 3 doors and discovering what's inside of them and span that into a big, thick novel. And I thought that was very impressive. I thought it was a good sense of pacing, which is why I think I appreciate the book so much, because when I try and write stuff, I have a tendency to rush the pacing as hard as I could, and it's very hard not to, especially if you know how the book's going to end in your head, like, well, how any story is going to end in your head. It is really hard not to pace myself into getting real deep into the human aspect of the whole thing, and that's really what that book did, was it focused on these human aspects and what was going on in these people's lives. It was really an amazing book. And so after that came the third book, The Wastelands, which is another good one. Oh, God. They have to go through this big city at one point in time called, oh God, I can't remember. It was 3 letters, very simple city. A lot of hell breaks loose in that one. That one didn't take a week to read, but it didn't take too long to read. And after that came Wizard and Glass, which is probably the most arduous one I had to read, just because it was a lot of waiting. It was a flashback book, basically. It told the story of Roland, the main character, as a child, and what he did to kind of spark this quest, kind of start him on this quest. The book itself was, it was a good story. It was just, the story was about him finding his first love, and they basically spend the entire book having sex and not giving a damn about anything, which that was kind of the whole point of the story, is that first love sort of thing. But I was kind of siding with his 2 friends in the story, who were basically like, well, dude, we got to get this story moving, so let's go. And Roland was basically saying, nah, I'm okay, I'm just gonna wait it out. And so that one was a really slow go. It was hard to get through it. But once I got through it, that leads you basically into the last 3 books, which Stephen King wrote after he got hit by a car, which was in June 19th, I think, June or July 19th, 1999, which is where the number 19 comes in, which is a big important factor through the whole thing. And but the last 3 books, he kicked all 3 of them out within the span of maybe 3 years. I don't know. And he really did it. He did a damn good job with them too. Book 5 really made up for the slow go of book 4. Really pounded the action in there. And so it basically brought me back to the first book, which in the first book there's this part where he just guns down an entire town worth of people. So it kind of brought you back to that Roland, the Roland who is a gunslinger, and you get to see him be a gunslinger. Then book 6 showed up. Book 6 was a very short book, but it told the story it had to tell. So basically, book 6 kind of felt like a speed bump, unfortunately. Don't get me wrong, it was a very good story. It was just, in terms of after reading book 5 and knowing I had to go through book 7, book 6 was just this little speed bump that's really hard to reminisce about, because it was just like, well, it came in there and bam, it's gone. Book 6 was good, though. Song of Suzanne, and that was that one. And book 5 is Wolves of the Kala or Kala or something like that. Book 7, though, The Dark Tower, that is a beast and a half. That is a kind of intimidating book to get through, because it feels like 3 books wrapped into one. There's a lot going on. It starts off in one place and it ends in another, and in between there is a lot of stuff to go through. And it was really it was another difficult one. It wasn't kind of that arduous journey that Wizard and Glass was, but it was still a trek. There was a lot of stuff going on, and in the end it all kind of came together, and it was good. I enjoyed it. I was glad the way it ended, because it sort of made sense, and I've just been a big fan, and ever since then I've been wanting to write something, which is what I've been trying to do tonight. And so yeah, I guess that's all I can really rant about. So anyway, I'm gonna get back to trying to write something a little bit better, a little bit more organized, trying to think of what I've ranted about just now. And thank you for listening.